panel. I'm Allison Hazel, just Allie Hazel, the program assistant for Woman Crush Music. For those of you who may not be familiar, Woman Crush Music is a nonprofit geared towards women singers and songwriters to just help them kind of navigate the music business in all multifaceted parts of the music business. So today's panel is going to be about artist development in the digital age. We're definitely living in unprecedented times. So much is going on in our world with, the pandemic, and just so much is going on in our world right now. And being an artist per se is not necessarily easy, as things are normalized, but especially now it's kind of a bit more difficult to navigate. So we have an awesome all-female panel to talk about artist development and how to move forward, to push forward into how to develop yourself, especially digitally, where there's no concerts or festivals to perform. So I'm going to introduce our panel this afternoon. We're going to start with Brittany L, who's a brand manager at DTLR Inc. / radio. So I'll let Brittany introduce herself and we'll just go down the line. We also have Molly Rose joining us today, Brittany Burton, Little Bacon Bear. So I'm really, excited. But yeah, we'll start with Brittany.
Hi guys, I'm Brittany Lay, also known as HipHopCleopatra in the space. I started out as a blogger and working in media and journalism, working with online radio and terrestrial radio, and also marketing for labels in the music and lifestyle space. I also have my degree in mass communications, but I've done a lot of spin-off of that in marketing, and from both an entertainment standpoint, but also in sales, leadership sales, teaching people how to market themselves globally, and then also at Hopkins Medicine. So I've done a little bit in the medicine space as well. My background is a lot in marketing, no matter the discipline. So that's a lot of what I'll be speaking from today. Thank you so much, Allie, for having me. Nice to meet you all.
Molly Rose.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Molly Rose. I'm the founder of Every Rose Creative, which is a creative agency. I started as an event curator and then made my way into photography, which led me into the music industry. I've been active in the industry for about 15 years and been published. And this is my new venture, is starting this creative agency to give opportunity to women and minorities, and specifically in entertainment industry and art as well.
Awesome. And we have Brittany Burton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Allie. Definitely a pleasure. I actually am an entertainment journalist and publicist. I've been doing that actually since I was about 19, 25 now, and I got my start in the industry actually working with singer SZA, who is signed to RCA Records and Top Dog Entertainment. And, piggybacking off of that, I got an internship with DJ Drama. And one thing I realized is getting, experience at a younger age would allow me to do more when I did get to, my mid-20s and working toward my 30s. And so off of that, I've written for several publications, including Hip Hop Weekly, The Grit Daily, and a lot of different DJ blogs. I do marketing. I'm actually a digital billboard rep. So I help artists get digital billboards in places like Times Square and all over the US, and just try to provide lucrative opportunities for people and artists that don't really know where to turn or where to look. You'd be surprised how many people reach out and literally just don't have a sense of direction, and just being able to be somebody that can step in, and help them is one of the things that fulfills me as a leading woman in entertainment. So definitely a pleasure to be a part of this panel with all these amazing women, and thank you again for having me.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Little Bacon Bear.
Hey guys. Well, first off, excuse any like snorting and weird noises that you hear. There's a Frenchie that is my nephew, so he's here on the floor. So just bear with me on that. But second off, I am a DJ and a radio personality for 93.9 WKYS. I DJ parties here in Washington D.C. and the DMV. I am most lately a host of a YouTube original. It's called Release, that is devoted to new emerging artists and artists that are breaking music on YouTube. And that happens on 11:45 every Thursday. Sorry, that's why I was late because I was actually filming that right before this. But I'm definitely great and excited to be a part of this panel of just great ladies all in general. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm so excited. All of you are like stars in your own right and experts in your field. So I'm really excited to dive in to this afternoon's conversation. Just a brief overview. Artist development, I think, in general gets kind of misconstrued because, especially now, recently in this decade, because it's like, okay, what is it per se? And are labels even actually, still developing artists? Because we're seeing, just people get, picked up just off of social media and just as they are. So just a little brief overview on artist development. It's basically crafting artists from their talent, their digital marketing, just the whole picture in general. So I want to ask you guys, with that being said, do you think, first off, if it's a lost art, are people still doing it? Anyone could take this question. Do you think it's kind of a thing of the past, or what are your views on artist development in today's day and age?
I will say, as on the radio side of things, when we're talking about artist development, I'm sure Brittany can speak to this being PR. You send artists kind of in the world and making sure that they are representing themselves well when they come meet me at radio. I can always kind of tell when I'm talking to an artist that hasn't had PR training or hasn't had somebody that sits down and helps them understand this dance and this tango, down to the way that they answer questions sometimes. So that's the way that artist development definitely impacts me. And a lot of newer artists, when I catch them at interviews, it is sometimes interesting catching them very early on in their career versus when I catch them a year when they've had a press tour, they've already done the country radio thing, and then they've come to me. So I can definitely say that artist development is super important in that way.
I can piggyback off as she was mentioning about PR. One thing I feel like is that artist development is kind of fallen by the wayside in this newer era, especially with things like social media. And a lot of times you find people being, as far as artist development, getting it via the internet versus actual physical people sitting down with you. And one thing what she was referencing would be media training. A lot of artists lack media training, and it shows whether they're on their own social medias, whether they're on radio or on TV. And one of the things that does is it kind of breaks down the reputation of the artist, because if you're somebody like me who's a journalist and a publicist, I'm somebody that's training these people to speak, but then I'm also somebody writing about these artists. So I'm interviewing them, but then also trying to train them. And a lot of times you find artists who may feel like they don't need help. They're further, along in their career, may have landed a major record deal, and still feel like, that there's certain things that they don't need to implement because they're above, the curve. So I think with the whole quarantine happening, it's kind of forced people to kind of have to look at artists, to look at those flaws, to try to creatively figure out ways to get to the next level, because there was a point in time where no music was being released unless it was a Black Lives Matter or protest song. So it put a lot of artists in like this weird space of trying to figure out how to continue to develop as an artist, especially the indie artists.
That's interesting. That's definitely an interesting point. And I like what you said about media training too, because I feel like that's something kind of gets lost in translation, especially from the journalist side. For sure, we do kind of see a lot of that, and it kind of spins off to viral interviews, essentially, where artists are just going haywire or flat out walking out in the middle of an interview. I want to ask, I guess, even prior to that point, what do you think artists should have? We know, the EPKs and maybe, a decent social media, but what else do you guys think artists should have beforehand, on the groundwork before coming to you all?
Are you asking from like a hi, sorry. Are you asking from like a physical standpoint, or just like all encompassing? Because there's
yeah,
I have a lot to add.
Yeah, I would say kind of like the entry level point of, hey, I'm an artist. I got maybe about 3 songs on SoundCloud. I might want to, get a blog post or something. Like, what should I essentially?
I think, I think the EPK is really important. Like, even me as a photographer, I have a press kit. And my press kit is basically like a portfolio of things that I've done. But also I have a artist bio that is extremely important for any artist, just giving a background, like when you're sending out press releases and whatnot. So artist bio, EPK, and then I think just like content, like to get opportunities. Like for this, we had to have a picture for the flyer and everything for marketing. So having the right photos to be able to represent yourself when you have opportunities, and as well as social media, but they are a little bit different. You wouldn't put the same picture that you post on your Instagram that you might put on your biography. So stuff like that.
That's a good point. Brittany L., I know on the branding side, you may, like a lot of artists may inquire to you, or you may, I know for a fact, you kind of see a lot on the branding side from a personal standpoint, but also with the company that you represent. So what would be your take on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely on the branding side, I would say, so I've been in the space for about 10 years. I want to say I started when the blogosphere started to first kind of burst out into the scene a little bit, right? And at that point in time, one sheets were very useful, especially if you were maintaining a website, or if you were a blogger, if you were a part of nowrite.com or Two Dope Boys, it was easier to just send out a one sheet, a media kit to provide to the writer, so that they have assets and everything they need to pull the story together quicker. And I know that when we would service those things, we were more likely to get a response from the writer, right? I will say, now I'm on the brand side of things and organizing the strategic partnerships with the brands and these artists or influencers. It's still useful because a lot of times the person that's running the account may or may not listen to that genre of music, right? So they're familiarized with the artist, and they can kind of figure out where they can find them and realize where they can put them, and whether or not this particular campaign or this artist that I'm presenting really makes sense. An example of that would be, I'm just going to suggest, like, let's say a Reebok is looking to connect with someone in our space. And at Reebok, the person whom I work with has no idea who Lil Uzi Vert is, right? They don't listen to them. It's not in their space. To us, or to me, it might be like, how you don't know who Lil Uzi Vert is? But that's the thing. So there is the piece where that one sheet makes sense. And I've seen it also from a DTLR radio standpoint with our jocks, and we're doing interviews on our shows. So at some point, every jock, and Bacon Bear can probably speak to this, may not be familiar with the artist right then and there when they need to come and interview them. And so that's useful. I still think it's useful today. I have seen a digital element. I noticed that we still do use them, but what I am seeing is that a lot of them, even artists who do have that label support, don't have a one sheet yet. And I'm actually surprised about that, as I'm seeing that now. Like, you have a whole backing. So I'm thinking that that's something that may be thought in the space that is thought that it's not as needed, which I would still disagree, but I may be old school.
I will say that the one sheet is definitely helpful sometimes when I am looking at an artist to somebody that I don't know for the very first time. But I will say that, if you don't have a one sheet, or if that's something that you just aren't as concise with, you haven't figured that out, you don't have enough information for your one sheet, your Instagram literally is your one sheet in a lot of ways. I use Instagram as your one sheet. If I have an artist coming in for an interview that I did not expect, and they didn't get the email to me, I didn't get a chance to read all of this long information information about all your stats and streams and things, I will go to your Instagram and say, okay, well, what do you do here? Which is why having a good digital presence is so important, because that may be the one thing that I get to. I may not get the chance to open your one sheet, but I will make it to your Instagram and see what you've been doing for the past 24 hours, the past 2 days, just scrolling there. So if you are an artist that can't get your hands on writing one of those things or get a good bio about yourself or the good press kit, your Instagram can double as that. And it is a super important element. You can be getting a cheap Wix site, and you could be having a website, because that's another one place for people to find it, like littlebaconbear.com or brittanyburton.com, so that I can just Google you and find you right there.
Right. One thing I would say is also one thing that people overlook is a bio. Having an updated bio is so important, because I work with a lot of independent artists. They may not have a big following. So if you're going to your social media, you still can't find out what they're about, what type of music they're doing. So one thing I want to recommend is everyone to always have an updated bio, because it'll tell me how you started, what you're currently doing. Your social media generally is embedded, hyperlinked in that bio. So then I can click to the social media. It is just very important, because I just have a lot of artists that I'm working around, and they're like, hey, I'm trying to build my social media presence. So if that's the case, then I can't go to the social media sometimes and find more information, but that having an updated bio is also very, very important.
Wow, all very good points. It's crazy. I just did like a bio writing workshop for artists about maybe 2 weeks ago. I think that it's kind of starts there too, because you can use the bio for your EPK, for your website or whatever. And I do like the point about Instagram too, because it's so sometimes, like even now, like even think about years ago when you did like the whole business card or go to my website, but now it's just like, oh, what's your Instagram, or like what's your Twitter? So I feel like that's interesting, and how that has changed too. Do you think people, as pertaining to Instagram, do you think from an artist standpoint, should it just be like a personal Instagram, or kind of like merge business? What are you guys kind of like looking for? Are you looking for like snippets, or maybe they're posting something on stories? Like what are you looking for as far as like Instagram for artists to post?
I think that the stories are like the prominent thing right now, especially if you have them portrait style and they fit the whole screen and there's that clean look. I really get inspired when I see, as an artist myself, when I see engaging content like that on the story. Of course, there's a good post, but I feel like more engagement comes from the stories these days. So I feel like that's probably a good starting point. And then in video, being yourself at your core, like seeing people's personalities shine through. That's also another way to engage with people and grow your following, just by being yourself. So yeah, stories.
Anyone else would like to speak towards Instagram? Kind of like, what are they hoping to see, or what kind of gets your attention in terms of artists on Instagram?
Go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, so I was going to say that when I'm looking for an artist, or just looking to find out more information about them, I'm definitely looking at how they present themselves, but how they tell their story for the consumer. I will say, like, I can remember some of the artists when Instagram was coming through, and the first artist who I fell in love with their use of imagery and how they told their story, and how they may have laid out certain things and brought a uniqueness to their brand through Instagram. Like Wiz Khalifa was one of the first, but I remember Future being one of the first to really leverage Instagram as a tool to show you like his high fashion, and he always had high res imagery, and it was just formula. You could tell he tapped into that formula. So I'm looking to see if you have found your niche within the space and a way to communicate with your audience that's consistent, and also telling your unique story.
I love what you said about using Wiz and Future as an example. I remember Wiz like early had the vlogs, And I thought that was so cool because at the time, no one was really doing that, like the artist blogs, and he would be on the tour bus and showing backstage and Future back in the mixtape days, the early days. So that's awesome that you mentioned that. I totally remember that era. What would you guys think about, I know you mentioned, I know most of you work more so on the independent side or the emerging side, kind of seeing the artists, rise throughout their career. Do you think the goal essentially now is to kind of stay the independent route and kind of do it yourself, or do you still think the goal essentially is to have all these things and build yourself up, essentially develop yourself, hoping to get signed or perhaps be part of an imprint or that kind of route? What would be your take on that?
I think that with it being more and more obvious that the deals in the music industry are not for the artist's benefit, it's becoming more talked about, and we're waking up to a lot of that. So I think a lot of artists, they want to go the independent route. Now, every artist has goals. And wouldn't everyone love to be signed to RCA and Capitol and Motown? But that's possible. But I think the reality that those deals, it might give you more opportunity in the beginning, but it's like, what is it really giving you in the long run? And I've seen a lot of independent artists really shine through, like Griselda is one, and of course GoldLink. They really have found like a way to maneuver and make money without having to be signed to a major label.
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think that the label route can be a good and it can also be a bad thing. You know what I mean? For some artists, it is a great leveraging experience. When you think about it, if you're trying to make a project, go on tour, if you're trying to hit radio and you want to be the biggest star ever, it is a lot easier to do with label representation because they're coming out of pocket to help these dreams come true for you. So if that is the route that you want to take, I think it's one, deciding where you want your music to be best appreciated, because there are independent artists that do find success. There's the currencies of the world that would say, I'll never sign it and I'll be an advocate from it. But then simultaneously, there are artists like Young Dolph that'll say that they're still independent, but there's still their foot in the industry and in the label side of things. It's a delicate balance, and it really boils down to where you want your feet to land. Because with, say, for an independent artist that's trying to get on the radio, not just here, but just all the way through and through, it is extremely hard task to get done if you don't have label representation, because then the expectation is that you have a relationship with not only me as a DJ, but the entire roster of DJs, the program director that's above me that makes decisions, not just me. When you go to PGC, to have a relationship with all of them, to have one in New York, we have a relationship with all of them. When you go to California, and when you go nationwide and then worldwide and try to have those relationships, oftentimes more than not, you just won't be able to have those, because that's the job of the record rep. Their responsibility is making sure that you have a service pack of your music compiled, clean, dirty, instrumental, and sends it out to all the DJs. But that's the best part about a label. You know what I mean? They have facilitated all of those relationships to put you in place. But the mess of that is, if you're on a label like RCA, their focus is SZA, their focus is Miguel, their focus is the City Girls. You might not be the focus of those things. So your hit right now may not facilitate anything from this point forward. You know what I mean? As soon as you become less hot, they stop sinking the resources into it unless something else viral happens for you, because their attention is going to the thing that is making them money. So, and then we see a lot of artists that get in that situation where they're not the focus of the label anymore, and the scope has changed, and they're like, oh, I don't love the label anymore. Well, the label helped fund your album. They help put you on tour. They help facilitate those relationships. So you're great. The label is great, but can also be, it's a two-edged sword. It's definitely a two-edged sword. I like to tell artists that a record deal is a large loan. It's a big loan, but it's a loan that you hope that you can recoup, and that your music will go just that far, that your tour will go that far, and you make your money off your club money, and you just hope that you can recoup and get all your money back, and you can pay back that loan that you own. But That's why it's a two-edged sword. It can benefit you, but it can also not, which is why it's important to have a good team around you to help decide, make those decisions with you and for you to help understand the bigger scheme of things to make that money stretch and make the opportunity lucrative for you both.
To piggyback on what she was saying, I was going to mention that your team plays a big role when it comes to getting to the mainstream music circuit or staying independent. Because it makes me think of Amy Winehouse. Some people are just not tour artists, but when you sign to a major record label, touring is a big part of it. That's how you make back the advancement. When you are signed to a major and you get an advancement, you have to make that money back. And a lot of artists don't have the proper preparation. They don't have the proper team around to make sure that those funds are made back. So then you find yourself in a crunch with a label owing maybe thousands of dollars because you didn't put an album out in time or something that happened. And then when you don't put
You
the album
smoked
out,
your budget away.
exactly, literally. And you have this big contract that you sign, obligations, and now you're not able to fulfill them. And so every mainstream deal is not for every artist, especially when you're not in the position that you feel like you can literally make that advancement back and double that. So you see a lot of artists that become your favorite artists, and then a year later, you don't even know what happened to that artist. And they just kind of fall by the wayside. So it is I feel like every artist situation is different and unique. And especially if you don't have the right people around you reading contracts, because there's, like, for instance, a lot of people may not know, like, quality control is under Capitol Records. A lot of people, the way that things get promoted, right, is it's the big, machine. Actually, no. Capitol Records is the big machine. So then you're actually under an umbrella. So for instance, when you're getting money, right, okay, it's Capitol, but then there's also quality. So then it's a middleman. Even with Kendrick Lamar, he's actually signed to Dr. Dre versus Interscope, and Dre's Aftermath is under Interscope. So things would have been different if he would have signed directly. You know what I'm saying? So each situation is different. You have to understand what that means when you're assigned to a subsidiary label under a bigger label. Because they may be independent, but the label that they're under is not. So there's a lot of different things and stipulations that have to be understood when you are trying to cross over in the mainstream market, because you can do it like Chance the Rapper, but everybody's not going to find success in that route. So you have to be willing to take certain risks and understand what level of success that you're wanting to obtain, because sometimes you can't do it on the independent level.
But also, how many hits do we have from Chance the Rapper that went Billboard? Huge hits from Chance the Rapper. When we say independent, how many of those were hits when it's all said and done? He had to make his team do these things. He has to do those press things where he talks about how many community works that he has to do all the time, and that he does all of these things because he has to keep himself on the forefront, because there is no label representation that's doing that.
He has to work harder, like literally harder.
Twice as hard, 3 times as hard.
Every day, like everything has to be on a more faster pace, more like consistency, releases, videos, everything has to be, because you don't have that access of help and that bigger budget. So I would agree 100%.
To add to what what both these young ladies said, one of the things BCF Moneyman was said to me before is it's really about the artist. When you really think about, because in terms of choosing whether or not you want to go independent or go with a label, and it's about whether or not you have, to what their point is, having a team, but having that hustler's mindset, being able to really put the effort behind it to the point of being able to pay back what you owe. And it's to put things in perspective, one single to really promote, because what you're competing with is not your local person. You're competing with the Drakes of the world who are on radio. And so they have huge budgets. One single may cost $50,000 to $200,000 to push. And we're just talking about one record to really give it what it needs. If you're talking about going national and going to all those different regions where Bacon Bear pointed out, knowing radio in DMV, knowing radio in the Miami region, the California region, Texas, all that stuff plays a role, but being able to get your music over there and to have it reach and to pay for, even if you're just doing digital advertising, that's a cost to that, to really have that reach. And I think when people think about, getting into the music game, they're thinking they're going to pop off online and it's just going to go bananas for them. But in reality, we're in this digital landscape where artists have a little bit more of an even playing field to play online, but also you're competing with people who have major budgets behind them, backing them. And so if you choose, to Bacon's very point, if you choose to go independent, understand that there's some value in actually signing to a label, as long as you know what you're signing to and what that commitment means for you and your team and how you really need to move to make it a lucrative business for you. And I think that's where artist development comes into play, where you are educated about what's available to you and how you really can make money, understanding that you may not own your music, but you have opportunity to make money on touring, you have opportunity to make money on merch, you have opportunity to make money on some of these other things. And that's why artists during COVID were hurting so badly, because a lot of them people were streaming music all day long, because we had nothing but all day to listen to radio or stream music on playlists and have Zoom parties or whatever. So we're in the house listening to music all day long, but a lot of these artists weren't seeing a dime of that money that's being made during COVID, because they make a lot of their money off of doing shows and touring and doing pay dates and showing up at the club and stuff like that.
The club appearances.
Yes. And so
the club appearances are super lucrative.
Yes. And if you don't have that, then, oh shoot, what did my contract say? Well, I'm not making money. My song number one, I'm not making a dime. And so that's where that team comes in, that's reading, your managers that know how to read contracts, that have you and them and your entity in the best interest. And just understanding what that means for you when you're deciding whether or not you want to stay independent, work extra hard, or you want to be smart about your relationship with the label, and also being smart about your leverage of what you have when it comes with the label.
Wow, so many gems just right there. It's funny because I feel like we can do essentially a whole nother panel just on the 10K walkthroughs alone, like, just all that kind of stuff. But it's a perfect segue into my next point. So let's say we have all the digital part on lock. We have, the Epk, the website, we have our media training. But now that we're seeing concerts and festivals and all of those forms of performing shifting to online, how does that work as far as you developing yourself to maybe want to do be a part of a virtual festival? Like, for example, let's say I wanted to do an A3C or something, right? And I'm pitching myself. I want to perform at, on this X, Y, and Z stage. What should I, as far as stage presence, but virtual stage presence, what would that look like? Because I feel like that's part of artist development as well. But versus you're not performing in front of a live audience, so maybe might be touching hands or crowd surfing, but you still have to kind of, give something. So what does that look like? Or what would you guys, if you're attending a virtual concert, what would you kind of, want to see? Or how do you think artists should navigate that? Should it be more of an acoustic kind of route? Should I put a backdrop? Or
I don't want to answer every question or anything. But go ahead. Go ahead. You go. I'll shut up.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it short, but I want to just make 2 points. One, so over the weekend, I'm working with this production team on another project, and they recently just did an offset virtual concert. I'm torn between the two. I'm strong in grassroots and in digital, and so I'm torn between the two because, to be honest with you, the experience is not the same through a virtual concert, right? And so you're not making money. It's just not. I don't care what people say. There's an experience that you go to a concert to feel the rave, to have the energy in the room. You need those speakers. Like, there's a reason why we love music. So let's not try to replace it, right? But you can do some fun things to engage your audience online. And I think not just trying to transition to virtual concerts, I think it's how we think about doing virtual concerts, how we think about engaging them virtually. An example would be YKOS just did one as well during COVID. And I think in the beginning, when we were trying to share with people how to really do this, the naysayers are immediately like, no, I'm not buying a ticket to watch something online. Like I'm not doing that. But in reality, the beauty about the online is that you may not engage the folks that are right in your backyard necessarily. They may not buy a ticket, but what he did was, if you could get just 1% of your million of followers to buy a ticket, you can make money on the show, right? And so they ended up getting a lot of 35,000 tickets sold on that concert for a virtual concert, but those tickets came from international ticket sales. And so one thing that a floor writer told me before was, America validates you, but international pays you, the UK pays you. And so this is an opportunity right now that I would say, if artists are looking to do virtual experiences, don't limit yourself to your backyard, your normal fan base. This might be an opportunity for you to expand and give an offering to people internationally, because that's where you may get those ticket sales, because they're not expecting to be able to walk into a concert necessarily with you anyway, but they love you online. And so that's one thing I think people can pivot their mindset just a little bit to take advantage of that. But I would not say use that as a replacement for how you connect with your audience. And that's it.
I high five that, because this is a chance to tap on in industries that you may have never toured to, places you'll never get to. It saves you the time, but it's also a perfect place for you to be personable and be creative with your backdrops. I think that, for example, like Chloe and Hallie, they have given us a couple of now virtual performances that have shown the creativity that it takes to get these things done. And of course, in their case, they have a budget, but again, it almost is a way for your fans to feel like that they can touch you and connect with you. You can't replace the concert experience, but you can be personable. I'm going to skip over that example, but this is really just a great time for you to be personable with your fans. Facts.
One thing I would say is, and it was interesting, I don't know if you guys know who Jennifer Holliday is, the original Effie White. I actually was invited to a virtual concert that she was having for her 60th birthday party. So that was one thing I thought that was very unique. Spin it around something major in your life, a birthday. It also allowed me to think, like, I could invite my grandmother, who I know used to listen to her, and get creative, teach her how to use Zoom. You know what I'm saying? It creates more of an aspect for you to dig deeper on the creative side. So I think one of the things is a lot of creatives, they just aren't creatives. They didn't know, they didn't write their own music. They didn't make, so they're struggling when it comes to digging deep on the creative side to be able to do these things. So when you have these virtual concerts, they're boring, period. They boring. I'm not even trying to be, they're boring. Like, it's so boring. And I just and somebody like me who just likes engagement and like to be talked to, like, one of the things I like that she did was she had a section for a virtual meet and greet, which I thought was very creative, because she was like, for like $30 or $40 more, you can ask me some personal questions after the concert, things you might have wanted to know. And she was willing to answer that. And so I thought that was something that was very unique, because I hadn't seen where, they have like a VIP section on, Eventbrite or wherever the site is that you're buying the tickets, for people to engage virtually and be able to ask their favorite celebrities and stars more personal questions. So that's something I wish I would see more of, because it allowed me to be like, oh my God, I love Dreamgirls. I would love to be able to ask her, like, how did this make her feel? You know what I'm saying, et cetera, after having the concert experience, which may have been a little bland, but now I get a chance to really connect, and show my love or pay homage, in a very genuine way. So that's one thing I wish I would see more of, because that allows your audience and your listeners to feel more directly connected and feel like, my favorite is still my favorite, even though they're not releasing a whole lot of music, but it gives you kind of that more personal relationship with them.
I really like what you said about like the creativity standpoint, because me being a creative, I guess the thing that I look for the most is how artists are getting creative outside of just their scope, right? And their brand. One thing that I really have been looking forward to, like, during this time, is the music videos that people are producing, the mini documentaries, even just being more active and showing me their day-to-day, their creative process when they're in the studio. If you're not that like live performance person, if you're not that IG live person, I absolutely am not. Then you can do other things. You can do curated content. So it doesn't, if you can't fit into that shift, if that doesn't speak to you, then there's lots of other content building that you can do and take this time to expand on. And I just want to highlight every point that we've talked about today all comes down with a team. So how behind like all of that content, people reaching out for you, looking for opportunities, this is something you want to have people on your team to do with. So, and creating content is no different.
That's a good point too, Molly, because it's crazy. I did see something on like Twitter kind of a few weeks back saying essentially this is the time, like the rise of the introverts kind of thing for for people to who are, you know, not that sociable anyway, to kind of, you know, showcase themselves and create content. I would say to that point, a good idea may be to like batch content. So just kind of do stuff in bulk and set days to release it, so you kind of stay in that momentum, so you're not essentially burning yourself out and creating things in, you know, in real time per se. So I think batching is a good way. And also there's so many tools I feel like now. You guys did mention, you know, having a team, having a small team, having that foundation behind you. For some people who, you know, may not be able to have a team, or they're kind of on the DIY kind of route, there are so many tools that you guys can use, like Canva, MailChimp, PicMonkey. There's like the list goes on. There's so many DIY tools. And until you kind of, you know, build that momentum or have that financing and kind of, you know, outsource. And you can even outsource to another on like Fiverr or like one of those kind of sites for pretty low. I do have I'll probably put in the chat towards the end. I do have like a resource guide that has all that stuff. I'll be sure to drop it in the chat towards the end. Another question I have, pardon?
Can I just piggyback off of what you said about batch? What did you call it?
Oh, like batching content, kind of like
batching content. Yeah. I just wanted to make it really important that probably more important than the content is the rollout. It can't be willy-nilly. It has to be planned out. Look at dates, look at times, look at what else is going on with your other artists and that your fans engage with. So yeah, anytime you're dropping content, just make sure you talk and think it out, capitalize on it, because you're putting all your resources and time into it. You don't want it to just get overlooked by the algorithm.
That's kind of a segue into what I was thinking about. You guys,
oh, okay.
Yeah, you guys have been doing it all afternoon. Kind of a segue to what I was thinking about. I think we have seen some pretty interesting rollouts and this present time. We're also seeing essentially a lot of like comebacks. Speaking of, you know, we've seen SZA drop something new. We've seen Bryson Tiller do the anniversary things. I know Bacon Bear mentioned, you know, doing stuff around like dates and, you know, birthdays and holidays, anniversaries. I think that's good too. What would be your take on those essential kind of like, you know, rollouts? Should it just be like, let me drop this visual and kind of see what happens? I know everyone essentially isn't like a Beyonce and just like, okay, boop, and then just kind of let the fans kind of, you know, take it. But yeah, what would be some type of, you know, engagement or live action that people at home should do? Should it just be, you know, drop a picture on Instagram and kind of like see what happens? Or
That's where the creativity definitely comes into place, because you want to make your work matter. If you're spending all this time making this project matter, Molly was absolutely correct. Having a rollout shows how creative you are. You have to be mindful of the fact that if you're dropping this project during the time that the Super Bowl is happening and you put this on Instagram and the algorithm is focused on everything that has to do with the Super Bowl, your thing just may be washed out. What are you doing to make your work matter and make it make sense? Like, not everybody is going to have a team. I'm cognizant of that. Not everybody is a team player. You just have to work with what you got and you have to make your work matter. So whatever that is, not everybody can be a Beyonce and just surprise, I have this surprise album and drop it. Not everybody's got a highly anticipated album, unfortunately. It's what can you do creatively to keep the momentum about yourself? People have faked their deaths. People have faked babies. People have done wilder things to just create buzz about themselves. But once you have created that buzz, keeping that momentum and have a plan with it and stay concise with it. But again, don't focus it, try to keep mindful of the fact that there are other bigger artists, or there are artists that are comparable to you that might be dropping projects at the same time. You don't want yours to get washed out. And the unfortunate part is, like, Instagram, for example, has messed us all up with an algorithm. You know what I mean? You may see this content. Encourage your fan base to engage with all your other content. Make sure that you like this post so that you see my future posts and event in advance. Those things are important, because these things, your algorithm may not bring it to the forefront of your feed. You ever notice that you'll be on Instagram sometimes and you haven't seen this person on your feed for 6+ months? Like, where the hell have they been? I didn't even know I still followed them, because the algorithm didn't bring it to the forefront. So being mindful of the platform in which you're promoting on, your rollout may work on Twitter, but it may not work on Instagram. So keeping mindful of that there is different platforms and there's different places in which your fan base engages with you different. Same with Facebook. You might have to simplify it for the people that are on Facebook, your aunties, your uncles, your moms, and things. Just being mindful of who you're trying to target and keeping that demographic in mind when you're trying to create your rollout. There's plenty of creative ways to do it, and there are plenty of free ways to do it on top of that. You got Canva on your phone. You could be making these flyers for your rollout, just as simple as that.
That's an awesome point. I like what you said, Baking Bear, about being cognizant of the platform that you're using, because it doesn't always translate sometimes, as far as like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. I even seen people doing stuff on LinkedIn, which is, don't sleep on LinkedIn either. Like, LinkedIn is where it's at for real with a lot of stuff.
LinkedIn is where you can get some of those real partnerships, strategic partnerships as well. That's where the decision makers are.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what everyone was saying, one thing I know that's important when you are deciding to come back out is building up your engagement toward the release. Now your audience may not know that, but if you know things like going live more, seeing people want to see you in the creative space. And I always say that when I'm on social media, I want to see you in the studio. I want to see you grinding. Like, I want to see you ain't got no sleep. I want to see you looking like Kendrick when he was making To Pimp a Butterfly. I want to see it. So we may not know what's coming, but if we see you working consistently, like, okay, something major is coming. And I think that's a big part of also when you are gearing up for a release, also understanding your target audience. I think that's what Bacon Bear was saying. Like, if you know that you're making some records that you want for TikTok, okay, that's not going to be your mom's generation of listeners. You know what I'm saying? So your verbiage should be different when you are posting things that are relating to the younger generation. Yeah. So if you cross over to a thing like Facebook, you might make a more personal message, because a lot of people, like my family is on there, people from like high school and stuff, and people that have known me from different spaces, and especially outside of that creative professional space. So therefore the language should differ what you're saying. Maybe you be more heartfelt, maybe you're tagging certain people that have been supporting you, but they're not on these social media platforms like Instagram and Twitter. So things like that also differ. And then understanding what is being released when you're planning a release. A lot of times you can figure out when Madonna's about to release something, when Cardi's about to release something. I even get press releases ahead of time. Hey, such and such just announced that their album is coming out. Having somebody on your team that knows stuff like that can also give you a leg up. So therefore, when you're trying to get a #1 record, you're fighting against Drake. Maybe you should do it the weekend after. Things like that is very important as well.
I just wanted to make a quick note and piggyback off of what Brittany said. I agree with everything she said, and I kind of was just mentioned it in the chat a little bit, that I think it goes back to, that's a perfect example of going back to what I was saying about telling the story online and making them a part of your process, seeing that build up. Because the one thing that we didn't used to have all the time is this two-way street of communication with your fan base. And when you share those stories and you're letting them see your grind and you're in the studio and bringing them in on that, it makes your audience feel like they were part of the process. They get excited with you. Because they're like, yo, I seen you in there all night long. So now they're excited to see what you're going to drop from that process that they were a part of, right? It's almost like they were in there with you up at night. So it's like, that is a different way to connect with your audience than in the past. You know, it used to be just, let's just amplify what we're doing in a one-way street of promotion or a one-way street in communication. And the beauty of social media and digital media now is that it is this two-way street where your audience has a somewhat of a say, or can give you feedback and can cheer you on the way up. So I think that making them a part of that process and your authenticity and consistency with that will help you build that audience and that loyal fan base, that when you decide to do a merch drop or you decide to do a email blast where you want people to subscribe to you so you can build that solid fan base that you can talk to every time you get ready to drop something and you engage them. That's how you do that now. You make them a part of that process.
And we know that that works because look how many people flock to YouTube when De'Ara and Ken are about to drop something. They want to see your everyday life. They want to see you picking your nose. They want to see your down day where things are really tough. People want to know that you're a human just as much as you are a human. Don't be obsessed with perfection and perfect rollouts and perfect this and concise things, but because people want to connect, they want to feel close to you, which is why they follow you on Instagram, which is why they watch their story. They want to be close to who you are. Don't be obsessed with the end product. Be obsessed with the journey and showing that journey. So taking the time out to Instagram Live, taking the time out to reply on those DM requests, taking the time out to take those pictures if somebody stops to talk to you, just taking those special personable moments will definitely take you a lot farther because people are obsessed with what you're doing behind the scenes. Fortunately we see it with YouTube.
Yeah, I think that's essentially the social part of social media, like showing what's happening. Unfortunately, we are kind of running out of time.
What?
So yes, I know. It's been it's been such a good conversation.
It really is good.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
Something. This is amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it could essentially go on and on, but I'm gonna scan the chat for a second to see if anyone has any additional questions or if people attending may want to point something out. So if you have any additional questions for our panelists, definitely drop it in the chat at this moment so I can kind of take a look at it. Also be sure to network because there's so many awesome people in here that essentially do the same thing or work kind of in the same capacity. So be sure to, drop your social media, what do you do, your website, definitely for sure. Lastly, if there's any closing points, if any of one of the panelists want to say like their last kind of words of wisdom, or while I kind of scan the chat at the moment. So if there's any final words of wisdom, advice, or even if you just want to, shout yourself out. My @ is @so-and-so. You can find me here, or any closing remarks.
Thank you guys for having me. This was actually one of the more refreshing kind of panels that I've been on now at this point. And it is great to see both women and men in here. I'm sure that all of the panelists can agree. Our DMs are open. If you have a meaningful insight and a meaningful question, this is a perfect place to connect because, we're all working through this social distancing time and the playing field is finally level. We're all just sitting behind a camera trying to figure this out. So don't be discouraged. Take this time out to be personable with one another and connect with one another. So thank you guys. I appreciate y'all for real.
I wanted to say, definitely a pleasure connecting with so many powerful ladies in entertainment. But to the people in the comments, I want to say, be ballsy. Don't be scared to approach anyone. The worst thing somebody could tell you is no, but there are so many other people, even in the same, it could be a record label. One label exec might have told you no, the other one might tell you yes. Figure out a way. Don't take no for an answer, especially if you feel like you deserve to have an opportunity or you're supposed to be in that room. Be ballsy, be different, stand out. Don't take no for an answer if you feel like you're supposed to have it. I just, that's the best advice I can give you. Be ballsy. It's a gutsy industry. A lot of people, you're wondering how they made it because they were willing to do what you were not. And when you don't want to do what needs to be done, somebody else will. So just keep that in mind.
I just wanted to share this this thing that I saw, and I always think about it when I'm having my own doubts as an artist. But there's this diagram. I wish I could pull it up, and it says on one end is complete narcissism, and the other one is crippling self-doubt, and in the middle is art. And I feel like that really embodies kind of like the type of person you have to be a successful artist. You just cannot care like about what anyone thinks. You have to just be yourself, and you have to have balls. You have to go after whatever it is that you want, and you're gonna get no's, but then you just go around it. You just go find someone else. There are people that will listen to your story and that are interested. And you got to cater to those people and not be too worried about trying to appease one genre or type of fan base, etc. So that's my gem to drop for y'all. Thank you so much for having me and to listening to me. My website is everyrose.co, and you can follow me on Molly Rose Creative. Thanks again for having me.
I just wanted to say thank you, Allie, for having me. I think I want to leave everyone with, if as an artist or just anyone that's kind of out here chasing your dream, to have a hustler's mindset, to figure out how you're going to make money and be lucrative for what you're trying to do, even if that means understanding the business side. And let's say that's not your forte, that's okay. Surround yourself with people you trust and you can lean on. And that does not always mean your best friends. It means the people who are qualified to do the job that's going to help keep the money and keep you guys rolling. That means the person that knows what to do with that advancement, should you get one. That means people that are going to be in your corner telling you, hey, we're not going to smoke before we go into this interview, so you on point. That means people who can let you know, hey, we're going to deal with these brand partnerships a certain kind of way so that we know how to use this and use it as a stepping stone to get to the next level. Having those people around you to make the smart decisions when you may not know all the answers is so critical in your career, because as we all know, it's not just about you and the music, it's about the team that's around you, and having the wrong people around you could really make your career go downward or put you in debt. So surround yourself with those people and get your mindset and your head in the game when it comes to this game, because it is a fast-paced one, and is one where you can get you can definitely kind of get some things flipped around on you or get yourself in a bad situation. And so definitely be smart about how you move in those areas. Thank you so much for having me, Allie, and for putting this together. I really enjoyed speaking with the rest of you ladies.
Okay, well, that was great. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad that we're ending, but yeah, once again, thank you everyone for coming out, taking the time to just, chop it up with us. This was again such a great conversation, very informative, very engaging. Everyone had great points. I will leave you guys with this. Tomorrow, Woman Crush Music is having song sessions. So if you're an artist on here, definitely tune into that. It's essentially like live feedback from other established artists and A&Rs. So that's an awesome thing. It's a monthly recurring thing. It's really, it's pretty cool. So definitely check that out tomorrow if you have the time, and stay tuned for more stuff like this. You can find me on social at Allie the Journalist, on Instagram, Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, my full name, Allison Hazel. Definitely connect for sure. And lastly, another note, speaking of all the stuff that we were kind of talking about today, I do have an EPK workshop next week. So definitely tune into that if you want to learn more about writing bios and EPKs. I do have a workshop next week. So yeah, stay tuned. And yeah, thank you all so much. and we will see you next time. Fully, bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.